back to Open Your Eyes. We're moving now into our first segment for the morning. It is a fun Friday. It is a fun Friday, that much we can tell you. And for our guest this morning, no, you're not going to dance this morning. We are so glad that you're able to join us this morning. We're talking about the Institute of Archaeology, and they'll be chatting with us about the protecting archaeological sites and objects in our beautiful country. In with us, we've got Sylvia Batty. She is actually an archaeologist, and of course, at the Institute of Archaeology, and Josue Ramos, who is an archaeologist as well at the Institute of Archaeology. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having us.
It's nice to have you guys in. Yes. Now, I'd like to get this conversation started with primarily the department's job. Like, what the Department of Archaeology or the Institute of Archaeology? What's the main task?
We got a lot of things. So we manage everything that is considered an archaeological site or an object, which is quite a bit because, we had the ancient Maya civilization here in Belize and we have our historic period. So there's an extensive amount of archaeological sites and objects in our country. Okay. Anything that is over 100 years old, made by man, whether that's a building, that's an object, that is considered a archaeological either material, an object, or site. So take a wild guess. How many sites
we've got in our country?
Yes.
That would be over 100 years old?
Yes.
You guys really want me to guess?
Yeah.
Yes. I can't tell you the answer.
Let me see, probably guess 50?
Why 50?
I don't know. You asked me to guess.
But
that's the thing.
Over 100 years old.
Over 100 years old.
Take that 50 and add a 0 and then add another 0.
So 5,000.
Yes. Over.
5,000.
Over. And of those, we manage archaeological reserves that are open for tourism. So the Shanantonich, the Santa Rita, the Caracol, the Cajalpech, Lobanto, Nimlipunit. That's what the public sees because that is what is open for tourism, which is also that management happens at our department as well. But there are over 5,000 archeological sites in Belize that need...
In our country alone?
Yes. In our country. And Bergiski, for example, that have 18 sites.
What?
18.
And then you're not counting the atolls.
Wow. All right, so question here. How do we determine that something is over 100 years old?
Well, just to add to what Ms. Sylvia was speaking about, and to give a little synopsis of where archaeology stands, I always use my hand as an example. There is niche, I'm sure you guys are aware. You, John, you have followed certain activity and
yes, sir.
certification niche there. So, and then you have the Institute of Archaeology, one branch, ISCR, the Museum of Belize, and ICA. So the Institute of Archaeology is one branch under niche.
Okay.
And we are managed by the NICHAC. There is actually this legislation. And the Institute of Archaeology is mandated to carry out all those responsibilities that Ms. Sylvia has explained.
Okay.
And in addition to that, we have another Heritage Act that was passed in 2017. And you were not wrong that it doesn't have to be 100 years. In that act, one is of historical importance, and the Institute of Archaeology deems it as very important for the benefit of the country, because at the end of the day, everything belongs to us. It doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to you, nor April. Okay. It's collectively for all of us.
So then with that, right, the first flag that was raised for independence, is that considered an artifact, a historical?
Well, on the 2017 legislation, it will be considered that because it plays a significant role in telling a story, telling the history of Belize. Okay. And for example, here in downtown Belize City, there are a number of buildings. Some of them are over 100, some of them are not 100. So once they play an important role in shaping the history of Belize, then we as an institute are mandated to guide on how to best preserve and protect these buildings or objects.
And we continue to find new things that would be considered to be artifacts. What would be one of the latest things that we've found?
Well, not to preempt myself, but one of the things that we do as an institute, and in working with the wider community, working with other government ministries, NGOs, etc., we also have seen a significant amount of road projects where we partner with the Ministry of the MIDH, we partner with the contractors, and recently we have done some salvage excavation up in the Libertad Junction. There we have collected at least 50 to 75 complete whole historic battles. So that's the most recent, because of, you're aware that the pandemic has kept us back from bringing in the over 20 field schools that we normally have. But recently, things that we have found is historic. And we're in the process of monitoring all those projects up north, as it's in the Coyote area.
When you talk about all of these excavation and projects and so forth, how do you stop people make a break myself. Right? I'm comfortable. We have a series of people that don't really, some know, some are aware, and some are not, about what they are taking out from the ground that would be deemed an artifact or something of archaeological significance or historical significance. So what is looting, and how can we prevent people from looting?
Part of it is doing this, and we are grateful for the opportunity to have us here. I'm pretty sure you guys have a large audience, and this is part of the campaign, the anti-looting campaign. So we go to national TV programs, we do social media programs. When schools were open, we used to go to all from kinder, primary, high school, and sixth farm. Try to bring the awareness to people, because we have a small staff. We cannot look at the entire country on our own. So we depend on everyone to be the eyes, to be the ears of the Institute of Archaeology, because as I mentioned at the beginning, it's collectively for all of us. And we appreciate every opportunity we have, and we always tell people we have a Facebook page. You can always send us a message. If John sends us a message, we will never say, John told us that April is looting. And looting is basically just illegally excavating, illegally sometimes taking out material. And here is where I would love to caution and warn those subcontractors who have not fallen into line to contact us, because we are not here to stop development. We want to see development happen. We want to do it in a sustainable manner. So these contractors can always call us and say, listen, I'm interested in retrieving material from a particular area. We don't give mining permits, but we provide archaeological clearance for a particular area to say, listen, John, you can extract material, granted that mining unit give you a permit.
But I'm glad that you alluded to that. But if I'm excavating, I'm probably digging somewhere around my house, and I might find something that resembles something that, in my mind, you know what, this thing is an artifact. What do I do with it, and how can I get some more info on it, or what do I do?
That's a very good question. So first and foremost, when you dig and you excavate around your house, even or you farm, you plant, any sort of moving soil, dig your foundation, and you come across something, the best thing to do is leave it where it is. First and foremost, there are legislations around actually removing objects or disturbing sites. So yes, you might not know it there, but once you come around and you look on this thing and think, this don't really look like something that I know or familiar with. This looks strange, it looks different, it looks a little bit old, quotes unquote, because we're smart people. We could figure that out at the very least. Leave it where it is. Call the Institute of Archaeology. That will always be our #1 suggestion. You can get us at 822-2106. We're on all social medias, so you could send us a message, send a smoke signal, and we're more than likely want to see it.
Why is it important to leave it where it is?
Okay, so when it comes to objects, when it comes to anything that you find within the old things that you find, the context is important. And what I mean is where it is found, the position, the soil in it, the soil around it, the location, all of them the things is the information that we study to figure out what these objects are, what they were used for, and what their historical significance. Because archaeology really is like a little puzzle. And all of these objects and sites are different pieces to that puzzle. And if we want to know how people lived back in the day, what, you know, choices they did that helped them to survive in Belize. If you want to know what went wrong, because everybody talk about the collapse of the Maya civilization. Well, the Maya civilization did not collapse. We have so many Maya people in Belize today, but their civilizations changed. And if we want to take on the lessons from our ancestors and from our first civilizations in Belize, then we need to have all of the pieces of these puzzles so that we could put them back together. So leaving objects where they are and just giving us like a small call is probably the best for you in like long term when it comes to your development of your space, but it's also best for us because we can use that information to continue telling the story of Belize. If you find something, I know a lot of people want to say, if I find it, why I can't hold on to it, why I can't keep it. Well, also I know we'll talk about his analogy when it comes to mining rights, but when you find something, it belongs to all of us. That is the way our laws are written. So things that are of national importance, things that are over 100 years ago, it belongs to the people of Belize, not just one person. The Institute of Archaeology does have the private collection system, which means that you could hold objects in your possession. So say you made an excavate for your foundation and a pot or two come out of the ground. You call us and you said, you know what? I want keep this. I want have this in my home because it is important. We found it here, and you know what? I want help on take care of it.
Yeah.
The private collection system, one, is free. You know, Belizean love free thing. But two, it is a simple registration where we photograph the object, where we document it, where we tell you what it was used for, if like it's scientific importance. And then you could put it beside your TV, you could have it on, you know, your TV stand, you could have it wherever in your house. The sale of artifacts, transfer of artifacts for money, that is illegal. So the private collection system is a registration. It is free. We register that you will hold on to that artifact, you will take care of that artifact for the rest of your life. But that is a system that allows people to have objects in their possession. But if we come back in 10 years and say, you had there two artifacts, what ended, you are, you know, you are responsible for those objects and for keeping them in your possession. So it means you're not gonna sell it, you're not lend it to your friend, you're not will it.
But
Nothing like that.
Nothing
But
like that.
you know, I definitely want to get to the rights. But primarily, I'd like to know, how often do we get people who would come on in or call the Institute of Archaeology and say, hey, I've found something?
The way the legislation is written, the NECHAC, it provides for 15 days from the moment you found something to call the institute and say, listen, I have this. However, we know that most people will not do that. They would approach until you are already in hot waters, per se. And again, the anti-looting campaign, the awareness campaign helps a lot. Because when we go to any public event, we always bring brochures, we always tell people about this, and they'll say, listen, I have this in my storage for a number of years, number of months. I say, listen, we are not here to discourage you or put fear in you. Listen, this is the mechanism. Contact us. There is a form because there are criteria. Well, obviously, we don't want person with criminal records holding to these objects. So there is a criteria, of course, but as Sylvia mentioned, it's free. Most Belizeans, again, it is only for Belizeans. You have to be a Belizean to not own, but to safeguard, possess, or hold these things. Because, as I mentioned, it doesn't belong to one person. And by holding these things, then you are becoming responsible for the safety and security of it as well.
You can't put a price on heritage.
There is no price on it. And again, for the viewers out there, if you have something in your garage, in your storage, don't worry, don't have that fear. Contact us. It's on a first come, first serve basis. So if we have 5-10 people, it might take a little long, but be assured that we will get through it and you will be able to have your collection.
You know, sure.
No, I said this is your anti-looting campaign, but I also know that with anti-looting comes site destruction. And one of the things that we hear often in archaeology is, I never know that on site. And I guess the famous one is the destruction of Namul. But for our viewers out there, there have been thousands of site destructions in Belize.
Wow.
I don't believe that I have ever been on an excavation that has not had some trench, some looter's trench dug straight through the middle of a pyramid.
Wow.
And-
it is alarming to know such thing, and it simply means that we're supposed to be very cautious
Yes.
when we're going to be out there excavating. Yes, we want development. We understand that. We know that. But at the same time, you must have some way to be very cautious when it comes to that. But I had asked, how often do we find people with artifacts, or do we find people, or we find something, and somebody would come to the department and say, I think this is something, some sort of artifact?
Quite often. So a lot of people give us calls. There will be people that often come across ceramics, so small little pieces of clay. Once you come across a ceramic, you more than likely know you are in some archaeological context. Another thing that people come across a lot and tend to totally not make the connection with archaeology is historic bottles. So we will have people who just say, oh, I didn't know a bottle was considered, an artifact. I have hundreds of those at home. And I do mean hundreds. So we have people, yearly, we get less than 10 people call in with collections of objects that they want to register. But some of those collections are huge. Like right now, we're processing a particular collection that has over 300 bottles.
Wow.
So we're really not limiting people as to the number of objects. We understand that you have this in your possession. We understand that you want to protect it. We applaud people who want to do that, but we have people that really come in with hundreds of objects. It is a little bit overwhelming for our department. We are 4 people in our department. So we rely very heavily on volunteers. So if anybody is watching this and they want to volunteer, reach out to the Institute of Archaeology. You can handle objects. But
Sure, go
a
ahead.
lot of people do reach out, and people reach out for their development as well. So in a couple years ago, we had a very particular case in Corozal where someone was doing an extension to their house. They started excavating, and they came across human remains.
Wow.
Like it was an old cemetery. Josue did the salvage on that one, but there were full-on human remains, like right in this person's backyard. And it wasn't that deep. It was about this deep into the ground as well. And you can imagine, you have your house, and then all of a sudden there's bones popping out.
And your
Off the
ancestors
ground.
become.
Yeah.
I think you just scared John.
But I again like the fact that you went out on a limb to say, it is everybody's business, and we're supposed to be protecting it. You did mention ceramic, but at the same time, I might not know how to identify something is of age. Let's talk about identification of artifacts. How do we identify these things?
In the first instance, like Ms. Sylvia was mentioning, let's go to phase 1. You buy a house lot in the Cayo area. You look at the terrain and say, they have a little bump there. The first thing that comes to mind, I'm going to call someone with heavy equipment. I want to level that hill. So the first thing is to do, if you're not sure about that little hill,
A little hump there.
little hump, give us a call. We have staff that live
In the area.
We can go and take a look at it. If it's just a hill, they'll say, John, go right ahead.
Yeah.
If it's a mound, then we will advise you on what steps to take. There are certain procedures.
Okay.
One, the first advice is you don't have to level that hill. You could put your house on the side.
On the side.
The second step is, but my house is 50 by 50 and my lot is just 50 by 50. Then there is the mechanism of applying for a salvage excavation. That is not guaranteed, but you have to justify why you want to do the salvage excavation, because archaeology in itself is very destructive. Once we remove something, we cannot put that back together. And that's why it is a process, but there are ways on how to do it. Perfect example, as I mentioned earlier, with the road projects. They have a certain alignment, they have a road, and if on that alignment, there are particular mounds that will be impacted or partially impacted, we do the whole survey process, we identify, we get how much of it will be destroyed, and we find mitigation methods. And if for whatever reason, you have a flat area, especially in Belize City, out in the Keys, the historic part of it, you normally don't see a little hump or bump or hill. from the moment your workers are excavating, they start to find pieces of battle, starting to find clay. Clay is usually like a mixture of mud with other tempers. And you start to find a lot, and you know this is uncommon. It's not anything of modern utensils or ware that we have. Then you tell you guys, listen, can you hold a minute? You call the institute. We try our best to respond as soon as
quick
possible.
as possible.
We take a look, and again, we can guide or monitor your work in the area. Because I mentioned, we are not here to stop anyone. We want them to follow
I
due
think
process.
one of I shouldn't say it's hard, but you'll know. You'll know when you see a sherd, you'll know that it's human modified, right? But also the first few layers, right? Maybe they'll be small sherds, right? As you go along, you now find a pot right away, John. Is what I'm trying to say. You're going to find small pieces, and as you gradually continue to excavate, you might find more. Sure.
Absolutely.
Info that you guys shared at the opening, asking me the question, how many artifacts do I feel, or sites do I feel that we have in the country? I said 50, you said add 2 zeros, 5,000, right? And this is educational purposes here. What part of the country would we say have the largest concentration of sites?
It's very hard to pinpoint any particular area or district. The Mayas live not only in Belize, that's why we have the Mundo Maya, which comprises southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, Salvador. So the Mayas were literally all over Belize.
This was their land.
This was their land.
Yes, absolutely.
We do know that there is a limited amount of sites or architecture in the pine forest savanna area. But that's just looking at the Maya component of archaeology, because we have to look at the Paleoindian and Archaic period, which we find a lot of these projectile points, especially here in the Hattaville era, which were the first location.
Wow.
That the
Historical.
yes. And then we also look at the historic component. We know the history of Belize, that they started with logging. The main roads were the rivers, because at that time we didn't have roads. So along the rivers, especially the Belize River and the Sibun River, played a huge important role in shaping the history of Belize. And that's why any activity along these areas is critical, and we must follow due process.
I'm glad you mentioned rivers, because I want to talk about, so archaeology in Belize is predominantly on land because of all of the sites that we have.
Okay.
Right? Cool. But I want to talk about the underwater cultural heritage that we have in Belize, which is, it's new. Ever since Dr. Makilap took out that paddle from Paynes Creek, it's been an investigation in Belize to search the waters that have archaeology here. So you both are part of the UNESCO Underwater Cultural Heritage Convention. So can you give us a little bit of information about that?
Absolutely. So then the 5,000 sites that we mentioned, most of them they're on land, but we have numerous sites that are underwater as well. So that includes shipwrecks. So every time people are like, Battle of St. George's Key, did it happen or did it not happen? That's why we need underwater archaeology to go down there and see what the shipwrecks are like. All along the coast of Belize throughout our entire colonial period, we've got colonial period shipwrecks from about, let's say, 200 to 300-400 years ago. So fairly recent when you look at the expanse of our history, but still really, really cool and really exciting. We're talking about pirates, like Pirates of the Caribbean level shipwrecks. In addition to that, we have the Maya civilization. Again, they were seafaring people, so their canoes reached all along the coast in the barrier reef. So we have entire archaeological sites that are what you call submerged landscapes. So you know, sea level has been rising over the past couple hundred years. Sea level has risen, and that means that some of the coastal villages of the ancient Maya civilization that is now underwater, less than 10 feet of water, but the fact is it is underwater. So like April mentioned, one of our most exciting finds when it comes to underwater archaeology was a paddle, like a wooden paddle from ancient Maya civilization that was discovered in Paynes Creek by Dr. Heather McKillop. Now, why is this unique? Because everything rotten in Belize were organic.
Yeah.
So historically, we have the ceramic remains, but what we don't have is the organic materials. We don't have the wood, we don't have the leather, we don't have all the jaguar skins and feathers that these people would have used. So finding wood in that context was super, super unique. And that paddle is now in the Museum of Belize, and there are replicas down south and there are replicas in the Museum of Belize. But what is really exciting too is that recently, as of last week, we made an international commitment to ratify the 2001 Convention for the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage. So what this means is that we're going to be signing on to the UNESCO Convention. So it's a lot of work for our department as well, starting in the next fiscal year. But it means that we are going to be hearing a lot more about underwater archaeology. We're talking about monitoring, we're talking about surveys, we're talking about aligning our legislation to be more representative of those underwater features. And I'm sure Josue wants to talk about dredging and mining and what that means for development projects that modify the sea floor. Because, you know, dredging already occurs. And if there's a shipwreck, that's going to be on the seabed. So if you're going to dredge, you're going to modify the seabed, and you're probably going to disturb archaeological materials if they're there. So in the same way that we have interministerial partnerships with development projects on land, that same thing extends to development projects that are underwater.
I'm curious about how far you guys are going to go. Are you going to go beyond the barrier reef into the atoll?
It'll be to the extent of our territorial waters.
Okay.
So that's a lot.
Yes, yes.
But if you like diving and archaeology, there may be a space for you.
Well, and you know,
underwater archaeology.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that is actually a new avenue for our country.
Yes.
I know that primarily they wanted to sink a ship so that it could be, it can become a site, a dive site for, you know, for tourism purposes.
Yes.
And it's the same thing that could happen with archaeology.
Yes.
But you did allude to Josue talking about the dredging. So can we venture off there, please?
Well, as Ms. Sylvia had mentioned, we have had pretty much good working relationship with our key partners in other ministries, and I must point them out. The mining unit has been very fundamental in working along with us, as well as the Department of Environment. Even though there might be hiccups along the way in certain projects, in the surface area, I must highlight and commend all the contractors on the Western Highway, which was Tycrob, Emer, and on the Caracol Road we have ANN, BRC. We have been working along ever since, you know, despite the little hiccups at the beginning. And up north, we have been working with Tycrob again, Cisco, OECC, and the subcontractors, RGB. They have come on fold. They really understand the importance of archaeology. They want to follow due process. And that is one of the positives of COVID, because it has allowed us to give that much needed attention to these projects.
Indeed.
Going to the underwater and surface, there we have had less work space or that communication with these developers. And I'm hopeful that we moving forward, especially once we are signatories to the UNESCO Convention, then we'll be able to work along. But I've had a casual conversation with one of the CEOs, and she was willing to have us sit down and develop a plan, which I'm glad to hear that coming out from the ministerial areas. No?
All right. So again, this is everybody's business. When we talk about archaeology, like you guys mentioned, it's actually, once you find something, it's not for you, it is for us. Again, if we would like to find out more of how I am able to protect what we've got in our country, where do I go and what do I do?
Contact the Institute of Archaeology. So you can get us at 822-2106. That is our number. We are on Facebook. We are on Insta. We have our website. You can, send us a Facebook message and we will respond to you. You can send us an email. We're at ia@nichbelize.org. So we're really, really accessible on email, on our website, on our social medias, on phone. But you can visit any niche office also. So we have houses of cultures in the different districts. We have the Museum of Belize. We have the Institute of Creative Arts. And that's one of the good things about being a part of niche, in that, you can go to any of these offices that are localized, that are in your communities, and you can say, hi, I have this question about archaeology. Can you help me get in touch with them?
Yeah.
Because our houses of culture, museums, they are the first face for niche. They are the local component that allows you to access all aspects of your culture, whether that is archaeology, whether that's performing arts, whether that's music. So reach out to somebody from niche, reach out to the Institute of Archaeology directly on social media, on email, on our websites. You can get us, Institute of Archaeology, niche.
All right. Well, there you go. I think we've scratched the globe in terms of what archaeology is
Yes.
and how we're able to protect what we've got in our country. After all, Belize is everybody's business. All right.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to say thank you so very much, Ms. Sylvia. Thank you,
Thank you.
Josue, for joining us this morning to let us know exactly how we can take good care of what we've got in Belize. So I'll tell you guys this though. Any Christmas shopping happen yet? Because we've got some promotions coming on. Full Tech Systems will be in shortly with us, and they'll be telling us all about their Christmas promotions. And they know promotions. We'll tell you more about that when we